Welcome to another episode of Trafficking Insight. This episode is a subject that I talk about when I train law enforcement and personnel in human trafficking. I always say that human trafficking will not exist in any country if corruption wasn't involved.
Congressman Matt Gaetz is under federal investigation for sex trafficking.
Federal grand jury indicted suspended Charleston County Judge James Gosnell Jr. and an unnamed co-conspirator Tuesday with multiple counts related to the acquisition and distribution of child sexual abuse materials.
Teacher who is also a pastor is arrested following an undercover sting operation by Louisiana State Police and the FBI.
We ultimately found that someone down there, a sergeant connected with the Chino Police Department, was involved as far as John in this human trafficking prostitution setup that Mr. Harrison was running.
This topic pisses me off because the people that are supposed to protect these victims or are the ones actually doing it. Pastors, churches, police officers, attorney generals. I have been there. The head of human trafficking department. I have been there. Military personnel, immigration. That's like number one always. How you think these victims get into set countries, right? And the list goes on. Other episodes you've seen, mom and pops, people of authority. So yeah, it's rough. People like myself and other anti-trafficking nonprofits have to mingle with these individuals without knowing maybe that they're corrupt. It's a hard thing to go by because we're risking our lives and trusting the person we're collaborating with to do these rescues, and they happen to be part of the network. Enjoy, learn. If you're learning or if you keep, you want these type of videos of explainers and stuff, please comment down below. Let me know what subject or topic you want to know about human trafficking. I will tell you the exact truth.
Human trafficking. It's this massive, multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprise. But have you ever really stopped to wonder what keeps the gears of this horrific machine turning? In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden accomplice that makes it all possible.
All right, so let's just start with this central question. How on earth does a crime this awful, one that involves recruiting, moving, and brutally exploiting people, operate on such a gigantic global scale? I mean, think about it. The logistics alone are just staggering, right? So what's the lubricant that keeps this whole terrible machine running so smoothly? Well, it turns out the answer is something that's often hiding in plain sight: corruption. It's the abuse of public power for private gain. And that is what creates the pathways, provides the protection, and basically guarantees that traffickers all over the world can get away with it.
Right, so corruption is our hidden accomplice. Now you might think, okay, that seems pretty obvious that these two things go hand in hand. But here's what's so wild and honestly so messed up about this whole thing. For decades, the global fight against these two massive crimes has been happening in totally separate rooms. And this is really the key takeaway here, this silo effect. See, on one side, you've got the anti-trafficking folks, and they're of course focused on the victims and what the traffickers are doing. And on the other side, you've got the anti-corruption people, focused on things like bribery and abuse of power. The source material makes it super clear that these two circles have almost never really integrated their approaches, and that creates this huge blind spot where these two crimes meet and just thrive.
Okay, to really get a handle on how this actually works on the ground, let's step away from the abstract for a second and look at a real human story. This is the story of a girl who's only identified in the reports as M. Meet M. She was just a teenager from Moldova who was trafficked and then forced into a brothel in the Balkans. Her journey is absolutely tragic, but it's also a powerful case study of how corruption isn't just some background noise. It was literally an active participant at every single stage of the crime.
I mean, just look at this chain of failure. First off, her traffickers somehow got their hands on real blank passports, something investigators are pretty sure was done through corrupt officials. Second, even with obvious mistakes on those documents, M was moved across several international borders. Officials just looked the other way. And get this, third, the brothel where she was held was directly across the street from a police station. And not only did they do nothing, some officers were reportedly customers. This wasn't a failure of the system, this was a system actively enabling the crime.
And you know, this wasn't just some one-off thing. This quote from another survivor's account is just chilling. She was told by her trafficker to stand in a specific line at the airport because, quote, the immigration official was one of them. It's a perfect, horrifying example of how this isn't random. It's a calculated, reliable part of their business model. It's an investment.
So M's story really shows us the how. Now let's look at a framework that helps us put all these different corrupt acts into categories. Researchers have a great way of breaking this down into what they call the 3 chains of corruption.
And this is a really smart way to organize it. First up, you have the trafficking chain, which is all the corruption that helps the crime actually happen. Then you've got the criminal justice chain, which makes sure the criminals get away with it. And finally, the victim support chain, which can tragically put survivors right back in danger. Let's take a closer look at those first 2.
All right, so let's dig into that first one, the trafficking chain. Think of this as the operations side of things. This is where you see bribes being paid to border guards, officials stamping fake visas, or even police and military forces getting directly involved in the trafficking operation itself. This is the corruption that moves victims from point A to point B.
And then you've got the second chain, the criminal justice chain. And this is all about making sure the business can keep running, no consequences. We're talking about a police officer tipping off a brothel owner about a raid, or a prosecutor who just buries a case. Or even crazier, a corrupt official who only goes after the competitions of a trafficking ring they're protecting. It basically turns the justice system into a shield for the criminals.
But it gets even deeper than that. Corruption isn't just about the logistics, the paperwork, the bribes. Traffickers have figured out how to weaponize the idea of corruption itself. And that brings us to this really powerful concept called perceived corruption. This is the trafficker's psychological weapon. It's when a victim believes, often based on real experiences from back home, that all officials are crooked and that going to the police isn't just pointless, it's actually dangerous. And traffickers, they are masters at exploiting this fear. They tell their victims, hey, don't even think about running to the police. They work for me. They'll just beat you and bring you right back here. Now, imagine hearing that when you've grown up in a society where that might actually be true. That threat is incredibly powerful. It's paralyzing.
And look, there's a reason this threat is so effective. In so many of the countries where victims of trafficking come from, there's already this high perception of corruption. So if you grow up already believing the whole system is rigged and you don't trust the police, you become so much more vulnerable to this kind of psychological control. It makes a person feel completely and utterly alone.
Okay, so we've laid it all out. We see just how tangled up these 2 crimes are. So the big question is, what do we do about it? How do we actually break this toxic cycle? Well, the source material gives us some pretty clear recommendations. And the recommendations are pretty straightforward. First and foremost, you have to break down those silos. Anti-trafficking plans need to have anti-corruption measures built right in, and the other way around. Next up, training. A border guard needs to be trained on the specific red flags for trafficking that are linked to corruption. Third, you've got to get these different agencies talking to each other. Anti-corruption units and anti-trafficking units have to start sharing information and doing joint investigations. And finally, and this one is so important, we have to protect the victims who show the incredible courage to report corrupt officials.
So, at the end of the day, here's what it all boils down to. We simply can't pretend these are 2 separate problems anymore. Look, fighting the demand, rescuing victims, prosecuting traffickers, that's all absolutely vital. But as long as that hidden accomplice, corruption, is allowed to grease the wheels of this criminal machine, we're only going to be fighting half the battle. So the real question is, are we ready to fight on both fronts?